Welcome to Living a Spiritual Life with Tina Saachi, an enlightening show that elevates consciousness and awareness through spirituality. Discover that the way to live a complete and harmonious life is to live by your spirit and by no one else's beliefs. And now, here's your spiritual guide, healer, teacher, and your host, Tina Saachi.
Welcome, welcome. This is Tina Saachi. Welcome to the show. I love doing the show because every time I have a guest, I never know what we're going to be saying until the guest comes on. Today's going to be a special show, aren't they all? It's going to be a great show because this guest that I have, his name is Stephen. He will be on in a couple of minutes. He has really explored the earth in more ways than one. My previous shows, I just want to enlighten you that you can also listen to them as well, even though they are from the past. You can go on my website, tinasaachi.com, TINASACCHI.com. You could also go on Contact Talk Radio and download them from there, or iTunes. I've had many guests from different walks of life. My last show was regarding an author that wrote a book called Walking Through Illusion, and she talked about how Jesus speaks of people in his journey, and it's really a wonderful book that she wrote, and how to enlighten everyone on their spirituality. I've had school principal, living a spiritual life and creating success for kids in schools, and how she has dealt with over 800 people, 800 kids, and really turning the school around in terms of encouraging them to living with their spirituality. I've also had a veteran who had PTSD living a spiritual life, and by living a spiritual life, he has overcome that. And also an ex-Mormon, I think it was like 5-generational Mormon, that really had to go through roadblocks and barriers to overcome many rules and regulations and constrictions and restrictions and so forth. And now she's living happily ever after. So today I want to bring our guest on real quickly because there's a lot of information he can share with us. And so let's bring him on right away. I'd like to welcome Stephen to the show. Stephen, come on.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you for having me today on the show. I look forward to our chat today.
Now, Stephen, can we use your full name?
Absolutely.
So why don't you tell people who you are and just a little briefing on that and what you do.
Okay, my name is Stephen Sindoni, spelled with a P, P-H-E-N, and I am a investigative writer, freelance writer, writing screenplays, and a researcher of truth, and someone who goes after legends and tries to either make them fact or fiction, and spends his life pursuing these things. And presently right now I'm on the West Coast in California pursuing a legend which we'll talk about, the legend of J.C. Brown, shortly.
Mm-hmm. Well, that legend is really fascinating. I did some reading up on it in the past from your website and so forth, and I really want to talk about the legend of J.C. Brown. That is something that we really don't want to miss. So tell us about how was your upbringing? I know you're a former New Yorker, and we were both born and raised in the same town, right? Brooklyn.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your early training, if you will, your upbringing.
Well, I was brought up in a Catholic household. I had a Jewish mother and I had a Catholic father, which was like oil and vinegar, but they brought me up Christian Catholic, and we lived with my grandparents in Brooklyn. And for most of my early training, I guess my parents were never really there for me. So my grandparents, we lived in their house, I spent a lot of time with my grandfather and grandmother, and they were of the old Italian culture, and I got to learn my heritage from my grandfather and grandmother.
Okay. And so you were brought up Catholic, and how did you sit with, with the religion? And we're not here obviously to bash any religion or any Catholics. We're just we're sharing your experience. That's what we're doing.
Well, yes, I was baptized a Roman Catholic and went to Catholic studies, and as most people would, following the faith. And in the course of that, I became disenchanted going to Catholic school thereafter, seeing things that just didn't make sense with priests and brothers, with things that they were doing, and it just gave me a wake-up call that, for a man to take a vow of celibacy or abstinence, and they were doing things that just didn't make sense. I said, well, if there was a Christian God, why is he allowing this to happen? And why is it being swept under the rug? So there were some early things that I had seen, that just made me shake my head and realize, I have to pursue other avenues. And I decided to cut the umbilical cord and just start to search and find other pursuits of spirituality.
Okay. So what are you practicing now? What is, so we're going to fast forward to the present day. What are you practicing now? Any specific segment?
Well, I guess they would call it New Age, but I'm involved now in practicing Hinduism, Buddhism, and practicing affirmations from the seven sacred flames, things that are done through the Saint Germain Foundation, I guess. And I guess the best way I could, capsulize it is it's a light transformation, spirituality, indoctrination that I'm involved with, working with the light energy that where we all emanate from.
Right. Okay. So now you really you've gone out of the box, so to speak, because being brought up Catholic, everything is pretty much, in my experience, was pretty much in the box. There were rules, regulations, and from kneeling down, sitting down, in church, to now you are practicing, it seems like, an eclectic style of connecting with the light. Is that correct?
That is true. I mean, there is no control, C-O-N-T-R-O-L. I am not being conned, and I am not acting like a troll or robotic.
I like that. Very good. Very good. I like that. I may have to borrow that once in a while. Is that okay?
That's fine. I'm a man of many acronyms, and I keep it simple. And I was telling someone the other day, my spirituality is like KISS, keep it simple spiritually. And
very good.
If you listen from within, if you tune out the chatter, then you'll get to the heart of the matter. And a lot of it is to do with going in and listening rather than, the outward appearances of what's going on. You have to tune out to tune in. So that's pretty much what I've been doing the last 20 years or more, listening to what I'm getting. And I've been amazed by what I'm getting back as a result of that.
That is awesome. I've been hearing that that slogan a lot lately. I just did an expo in LA, and that's what came in. You got to tune out to tune in. Everybody around there we're talking the same same talk. So, all right. So then, what was the turning point for you, Stephen, that you decided that you really need to follow your own spirit rather than the control that you were talking about?
Well, it basically happened right after my grandfather passed away when I was about 12 or 13. I took his passing very, very hard. He was more like my father, and at that point, I kind of like shut down a little bit emotionally and spiritually, and I tried to get back into the spiritual side of it. So it was kind of like a tug and a war when you lose someone that you really love and you really care for. But then a number of years later, probably when I was about 26 or 27, I had an amazing awakening that made me realize that people don't die. They are on the other side of the veil, and they can come through. And my grandfather warned me. It was in 1987, I believe. I was living in Queens, New York, and I had to go to work this morning. It was about 6 a.m. And I got up. I'm sitting up in bed, and I'm thinking about, what am I going to wear today? What suit, what tie, what matching with what, And all of a sudden I look up and there's a smoke haze in front of me, and I could smell the scent of a cigarette. Now, I don't smoke, and I smelled, it was a familiar smell. It was a Lucky Strike cigarette. So next thing you know, I turn around, and I hear my grandfather's voice, and no one calls me Stevie. I heard, Stevie, do not take the car today. If you do, you're going to get into a serious accident. So I look to my right where I see the puff of smoke, and I said, Grandpa, is that you? And he repeats himself again, verbatim. So now I get out of the bed. I go towards my closet. I'm walking around the room. I couldn't believe what I just heard. So I go get dressed, go to work. And when I got to work, we had a garage area there where the cars were held in. And one of the guards at the gate says, you need to go see Mr. Eckstein, the owner of the company. I said, well, what about my car? He goes, he told me I can't give you the keys until you see him first. So I'm thinking, gee, am I getting fired today? So I go upstairs to the office, and my boss is sitting there. And this man is normally impeccably dressed, three-piece suit, not one hair out of place. And he turns around, he's all disheveled. He's sitting there in his seat like as if something seriously had happened. He goes, Steven, sit down. You got to sit down. He goes, this morning I borrowed your car. He goes, I tried to go over into Manhattan. I goes, I had an early sales call. He goes, I knew you were going out later on in the day, so I figured you wouldn't mind. And as I went over the 59th Street Bridge, the brakes locked, and I almost lost control of the car and went into the East River. So I'm looking at him. He goes, you cannot take this car. Do you understand? He goes, I don't want to see you get hurt. He goes, where do you have to go? I says, I have to go to Secaucus, New Jersey. He says, well, I'm going to have my secretary call you a cab. Here's a $100 bill. You think this is enough to cover, your transportation back and forth? I said, absolutely. So he gives me the money, and I go downstairs, and I'm waiting for the call, Tina, and I'm thinking, wow. I says, here I'm waiting for the cab. I'm saying, oh, my God, who's going to believe that my grandfather, just might have saved my life this morning?
Right. Yeah, so that was a turning point. So from there, you probably felt, wow, there's more to life than just to live the dogma, the restricted dogma, correct?
Exactly.
Yeah. So then from there, what were your leaping points? And I'm sure there were points of revelation, points of awareness, aha moments. I'm sure there were a lot of those points to get to. I mean, you add them all up to get to where you are now. But what other significant, and you don't have to go into many details, but what other significant milestones can you share with everybody?
Well, I was vacationing in Puerto Rico, and I had gone to one of their major tourist attractions. They're called El Morto, and what it was is a fortress where they had the cannons, where they had jail cells, where they had the battles, a couple 100 years earlier, in Puerto Rico there, which is very,
I was there.
Okay.
I was there last year, I should say, and I understand exactly what you're feeling. I kind of get that energy already, but go ahead.
So I'm in the dungeon there. I'm in the facility, and I'm picking up everybody's just sadness, the grief, the souls in there that like died, like horrendous deaths or just were tortured. And I had to get out of the building because I was bombarded by all this information, and I kind of said to the person I was with, I says, I can't stay in here. What do you mean? I'll tell you later. And I had to put up a timeout and says, no, I've got to go. So when I was outside, I realized, this is unbelievable. I'm picking up some energy here that, I don't want to carry today.
Mm-hmm. And that is a heavy energy, I have to say. I was there last year, like I mentioned, and I'm very sensitive to energies as you are. And there is a lot of energy that's still stuck there from so long ago. So let's fast forward a little bit more, and I really want to get into the legend of J.C. Brown, if you will. So can you tell us about that? That is a fascinating legend.
Well, in 2007, I was a freelance screenwriter with the emphasis on the word free. I had just written 3 comedy screenplays. I was looking for something that wasn't a comedy, something that was more dramatic, something that was just, a different genre, if you will. So I went on the internet, and I came across a story written in a book by Emily A. Frank called California Mount Shasta, California's mystic mountain. So in this story, there was about 3 pages about a legend of J.C. Brown. And just to get you up to speed, in the legend, a man shows up in 1934 to the office of the Stockton Record newspaper and tells the editor that 30 years earlier, while working for the Lord Cowdray Mining Company of England, he had found a tunnel that he dug out on his second time up to the Cascade Mountain area and led underneath Mount Shasta, 11 miles underneath the mountain, where he found an ancient civilization with hieroglyphics, a little city. He found mummified remains of a king and queen, hieroglyphics that looked Egyptian, and mummies that were 6.5 to 10 feet tall. So after reading this, I go, wow, this is amazing. And I wrote down the 7 or 8 clues that I got from just reading those 3 pages. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm going to spend about 2 or 3 weeks at the New York Public Library and run down these 8 clues and see if it's fact or fiction and see what happens. And that's how it all started.
So tell us more. Tell us more. We want to know more. At least I do.
Okay, well, I go to the New York Public Library, and the first thing is the man claimed that he worked for the Lord Cowdray Mining Company of England as a prospector. So while I'm at the library, I says, well, you know what? Let me go on the computer. Let me Google the name the Lord Cowdray Mining Company. Son of a gun, I got a record of it. So now I'm going, wait a minute, this company exists. So now my next question, Tina, is, was there a Lord Cowdray? I start searching. Next thing you know, I was led to some books. There was a Lord Cowdray. So now I've got an actual company, an actual man by Lord Cowdray. So I dig a little further and says, well, I reread the legend, and it says that the man claimed, J.C. Brown claimed, that he shows up in 1934, and 30 years earlier he had found this. I'm saying, well, I got to find a guy who's at least 60 some odd years old who walks into the editor's office in 1934. So the first thing was, could Lord Cowdray of the mining company be the same man? And then what I found out was he wasn't, because he died in 1927. So I go, I reread the legend again. I'm getting a headache now. And I said, you know what? I'm going to find something here. And it said, no, in the legend it says he was a loyal lieutenant for the company and worked there his whole life and then retired. So in the library at New York Library, I asked if there was any other books on Lord Cowdray. And they says, well, there's another library down at 34th Street you can go to. You may be able to get another book there. So I went there, and they had a microfiche. So I sat for about 4 hours on microfiche until I found an autobiography for Lord Cowdray. And in it, I found out that he really wasn't born Lord Cowdray. He was knighted in 1917. His real name was Sir Wheaton Pearson. So, interesting. Now I said, wait a minute. Now I know why this has remained a legend, because he really wasn't named Lord Cowdray. His name was Sir Wheaton Pearson. He was knighted later on. So looking in the book, I says, well, I'm going to dead end here. I need to find somebody else other than Lord Cowdray, because the man shows up in 1934. So in the book, his autobiography, there were 3 other men that Lord Cowdray gave credit for building his empire. I then looked at these 3 men very closely to find out if the age matched, if the location matched. And I came across one man whose name was John Benjamin Body. So it wasn't J.C. Brown, it was J.B. Body. And he went by the initials J.B. rather than John Benjamin, similar to J.C. Brown. I go, wait a minute, let me look at this man's life. So now I look at this man's life, and lo and behold, he was in that same book, he was listed as a civil engineer, just like J.C. Brown had claimed in the legend, and worked his whole life for the company, was around the same age as the man who shows up in 1934. And I says, well, I think I've got the guy. But now I'm thinking, wait a minute, okay, where was he? If he's a Britisher, he's a foreigner, he didn't live in the United States, were there any border crossings? So now I go to a different computer in the 42nd Street Library, and I start checking all the border crossings between the United States, Mexico, and Canada, and Cuba. And now is when I hit pay dirt. What I found out there, that John Benjamin Body, just like in the legend, came through Mexico, through Laredo, Texas, into Texas in 1904. And then in 1904, he comes in with Lord Cowdray of the mining company, but Lord Cowdray signs the manifest as Sir Wheatman Pearson. And then 3 years later, John Benjamin comes back in again with three other men, civil engineers that listed their titles, and his own personal valet, which proved that he was worth, millions of dollars. And then in 1910, I check another border crossing. At this crossing, John Benjamin claims that he's never been in the United States when asked on the manifest. The following year, he comes back in again with Lord Cowdray of the mining company. So here it is. I've got these guys tied coming into the country. I know when they came in. I know who they came in with. And the real question at that point was, and this is what comes into like different layers of your spirituality. Now I knew I had the man. But how,
When you say the man of which man?
The man of the legend, John Benjamin Biden, who was really, posed as J.C. Brown.
J.C. Brown. Okay. So now you have him. So I like to go into the story about what he knew and what he did and how he's MIA. Isn't he MIA at this point? I mean,
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So let's go into that.
So now I think I've got the guy. So now I've got to say, okay, let's go back to his time. Okay, so in 1904, he went up there to discover this.
Went up where?
He goes up to Mount Shasta to discover an ancient tunnel, and he decides that he's going to wait until he retires from Lord Cowdray Mining Company to go back to share the artifacts with the world. So when he shows up in 1934 in the office of the Stockton Record, here he is in his mid-60s. And the Stockton Record editor now gets him in touch with Harry Noyes Pratt, who's the museum curator of the Hagen Museum, who, after hearing his story, then gets him involved with John C. Root, who was a retired printer. And John C. Root says, you can use my house to have meetings. And they were having meetings twice a day for about 6 weeks. And at those meetings, J.C. Brown had told them that 30 years earlier, he had found this tunnel that led underneath Mount Shasta, where he found villages, he found roundhouses, he found hieroglyphics that proved an ancient civilization, which he believed were Lemurian, and that there were ancient chambers that he would take all these people up to Mount Shasta and would give them some of the treasures in two of the other caves that he found. But there was the one cave he wanted to keep intact, which was the chamber of the king and queen that were embalmed in ornate robes that he believed were the king and queen of that, Lemurian ancient race.
So all this information, how did you get all this information? How did you know that how did you get the information that there was ancient chambers and treasures and villages and civilization? How do you get that information? Go ahead.
Yeah, this is the interesting part. Once I discovered that I had this guy on paper, I ended up calling the Stockton Police Department. And I said, I want to solve a missing persons case. They says, well, who's the man? I said, J.C. Brown. They go, well, that case has been closed many, many years. I said, I still want to solve the puzzle. So they turned around and said, well, you need to contact the Stockton Record newspaper who wrote the original article in 1934, and they would be the ones to talk to. So I then called up the Stockton Record and spoke to their columnist, Michael Fitzgerald. Now, Michael Fitzgerald had done a story a couple of years before that on the Lemurians. So he said to me, I want to interview, but first I want to ask you a couple of questions. So I had not seen this 1934 archive article. It was in their storage. I had never seen it. I only had the short 3 pages that I read in the Emily A. Frank book to go on. But after speaking to Michael Fitzgerald, he says, how did you know all this information if you never had the original story? I said, well, I followed the clues, and through my research, I was able to, to figure it out. So at that point, he sent me the actual 1934 archive newspaper article of J.C. Brown's disappearance from Stockton, California.
So what does it say in that article about does it talk about the caves and the ancient civilization at all?
Yes. He talks about coming up to he called it the Cascade Mountain Range, and that he, on his second trip up there, he found a rock formation that didn't jibe with the surroundings. After digging it out, he realized it led not just to a tunnel, but to an underground cave system. And he took his mining paraphernalia and traveled within this tunnel. He said the tunnel was 7 feet wide and 10 feet high. So it was a pretty big tunnel that he was going through. And 3 miles into the tunnel, he said he found copper that was mined, he believed, by a former race. And as he went further, he found gold that was mined, gold mined ore. And then 11 miles into the mountain and 2,300 feet from the surface is where he came across a village. And in the village is where he said he found streets, houses, rooms that led to chambers, a prayer room, hieroglyphics, metal, weapons that couldn't be made today, and the embalmed king and queen, and also the 27 skeletons ranging from 6.5 to 10 feet tall.
How many skeletons?
27.
Wow. That's a lot of detailed information. That's amazing. So why do you think that it took J.C. Brown, you said he wanted to retire from this mining company. So why do you think he didn't say anything?
Well, a couple things. In the actual legend that I was, a newspaper article that I was sent from Michael Fitzgerald, thereafter I learned that he told the group in 1934 that a number of times coming up to revisit the caves that he was kidnapped and almost killed, almost lost his life. So somebody knew what he was trying to do. So he was very secretive as to his comings and goings. He also stayed at a federal shelter, making believe he was homeless. But he told them the reason he did that is because he was fearful of being kidnapped because he was worth $40 million. Now here's a man in 1934, Tina, is claiming to have been worth $40 million.
And this is J.C. Brown.
Yes.
So he was worried, concerned about losing the money and fearful of dying, correct?
Right, because he wasn't in this for the money. And then when I learned of the real identity of John Benjamin Body, or J.B. Body, I learned that he was working for the Lord Cowdery Mining Company from 1890 up to 1915 in Mexico. But they were building the Trans-Isthmian Railroad, which predates the Panama Canal by 12 years. And what it did is it connected the Gulf Coast of Mexico to the Pacific Ocean with a 210-mile railroad, which allowed freight to come into China or back and forth to the United States. So they beat the Americans to the Panama Canal by 12 years. But in the process of building this railroad, they struck oil, and they created the Aguilar Mexican Oil Company, which made John Benjamin Body rich, and later became the Shell Oil Company that we know today.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so tell me about the Lemurian race. That I know you probably have some truth that you feel inside. Tell me what you feel that is there. What there's some kind of cave, underground civilization somewhere. Do you feel that there's something still living there? Do you feel it's ancient? What do you feel?
Okay, well, once I learned all these things, I knew it was time to come out to California to search for this entrance, this cave. When I came out here, I came out with a map, which I believed I knew where the location was. Never being out here in this area, I knew exactly where to look. I don't know how I knew what I knew, but I believed that I was being guided through John Benjamin Body to lead me to where I needed to go. And in a couple of minutes, I'll explain why I finally learned that. When I came out here, I started lecturing at the college of the COS of the Siskiyous, and then at the stage door in town. And I met a woman there who said, she's 86 years old, name was Laverne. She says, "Stephen, I need to take you to meet a man by the name of Kenneth McNeil. I don't know why I'm supposed to take you there, but I always do what Spirit tells me." So now, Tina, I'm thinking, how do I deny an 86-year-old woman? I've got to go meet this man, right?
Right. I get it. Uh-huh.
So I go to meet this man, and I have his picture here in front of me. And Kenneth McNeil I'm in his home, and he introduces himself, and he goes through his life. And this man had a very interesting life. He had been, his girlfriend was Marilyn Monroe. He had been in Hollywood as a stuntman. He was even on stuntman for the Wild Wild West. So he had a theatrical background. He was an ice skater, and had been with the Elizabeth Clare Prophet for about 30 years, and talked about his life, in spirituality. So when he got done speaking, Laverne said to Kenneth, he says, well, I brought Stephen here. Do you know who Stephen is? He turns around to me, Tina, and says, well, let me ask my angels, Edwin and Johnny. They're standing to my right. So I look to where he was pointing, and I don't see anyone there. And he turns to me. He says, Edwin and Johnny have said that you are my brother from Lemuria.
Wow, that's pretty freaky, huh?
Yeah, so now it gets even better. He says, by the way, he says, we just had some guests just pop in the room. He says, Saint Germain is standing behind you, and so is Adama, the high priest of Telos. And Jesus has just popped in. I'm looking like, oh my God. And I can feel energy behind me, Tina, but I cannot see the things that he's explaining.
Right. Wow, that's pretty cool. Now, those people that are listening right now that don't know what Lemuria is, can you explain what Lemuria is?
Well, Kenneth went on to say, so I says, Lemuria, Kenneth. I says, well, Kenneth, how long ago was that? He says, well, we were together in Lemuria more than 10,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And you were my brother. So I says, brother, I says, well, what was my name? He says, Stephen, your name was Candu, and you were a shaman. You were a high priest, and you had a lot of ability. And I was your younger brother. I said, well, what was your name, Kenneth? He goes, do you promise not to laugh? I says, absolutely, I won't laugh. He says, well, it rhymes with Kenneth. He goes, my name was Candu. You were Randu, and I'm Candu. So now I'm trying to, keep it together. He said, and I've been waiting for you. I says, waiting for me, Kenneth? He said, last year I almost passed away. And just before I was ready to ascend, Adama, the high priest of Telos, this is the first time I had heard Adama, the high priest of Telos, who was underneath Mount Shasta, had told him, if you want to ascend, you can ascend right now. He says, no, I want to go up to the mountain. I want to come into Telos. He said, well, you won't be going in until next year. You're going to have to wait, Kenneth, then. It won't be till next year, but you'll be waiting for your brother to come. So I said, Kenneth, does that mean we're going together? He says, well, I've been waiting for you, my brother. So this was in May of 2009. So he said to me, he goes, well, have you found this back entrance that you're looking for? Because Laverne then told him, why I was there in California. He says, well, let me ask Edwin and Johnny and see what they tell me. So I wait a couple of seconds. He's conversing with his angels, and he says, they're telling me that you're going to find a back entrance that leads to Telos, but it's a physical entrance, but you won't be going into that entrance. The one you'll be going into will be an etheric one, but it won't be right now. He says, you've got more work to do. And I was, okay, more work to do. I kind of didn't understand. He says, well, what I want you to do is when you find this entrance, I want you to come back and show me pictures of it. Can you do that? So obviously I said yes. So this was in May. And then in the middle of the month, I then went and found one of the entrances that I believed was of the legend. So I came back. I did a YouTube movie about it called, I believe it was Return to Mount Shasta. And I show him the movie. And after watching the movie, he looks to the left and gets his advice from his angels. And he says, yes, that's one of the back entrances. But you won't be going in that one. But you and I are supposed to go up to the mountain in August together. So this is May. So I'm thinking, okay. So for the next 4 weeks or so, I would come see Kenneth like once or twice a week, and I'd bring him a shake, and we would pray. And he pulls out a book. I guess it's Prayers to the Seven Sacred Flames, which, if for those listening aren't aware of it, it was a book written by Aurelia Louise Jones, and we would do affirmations out of this book. And he said, I needed to get a book like this so I could get ready, for what was to happen. But I needed to raise my spiritual level for me to see the things or to be privy to the things that are on the other side of the veil.
Interesting. So, I think we need to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to wrap this up and get more into it and wrap it up. Thank you, and we'll be back in a moment.
Now is your chance to be part of the show. Call 877-230-3062. Call in with your questions or thoughts and talk with the host and their guest. Again, that number is 877-230-3062.
Is there a void within you, yearning to be filled with something greater? Or are you living according to others' beliefs or a religion that no longer serves you? Book your appointment with spiritual healer and host of Living a Spiritual Life with Tina Saachi at tinasaachi.com. Tina is a master in holistic alternative arts and can teach you to allow yourself to live a full and harmonious life guided by your spirit. Allow Tina to be your gentle yet powerful guide. Visit tinasaachi.com. That's tinasaachi.com and book a private session and live life guided by your spirit, not by others' beliefs. Namaste. Contact Talk Radio has strived to be well connected. Everything from the internet to your cell phone and now Twitter. Yes, you too can find Contact Talk Radio on Twitter. Go to twitter.com/CTR Network and get connected to what matters to you.
Do you want to practice more meditation in your life? Do you need help choosing the audio meditation or hypnotherapy that is right for you? Visit tinasaachi.com and check out Tina's best-selling audio programs. Topics include Serenity, Connecting with Angels and Guides, Weight Management, and Survive Cancer Now. You can also book a private session with Tina Saachi, a master in holistic alternative arts and host of Living a Spiritual Life. Tina will be your gentle yet powerful guide and show you how you can live life guided by your spirit in a harmonious way. tinasaachi.com. That's tinasaachi.com. Namaste.
Welcome back. This is Tina Saachi, Living a Spiritual Life with me, and I have Stephen Sindoni here with me as a guest. And he has talked about how his upbringing in a Catholic upbringing, living the life that he used to live is not what he's living now. Right now, he's living with the Spirit. He's on a quest to find out the truth. Probably truth for himself and truth for the rest of the world. He has information regarding a ancient civilization that existed or probably still exists in Mount Shasta. And the origins of that is Lemuria. And the time of Lemuria, my understanding is a time, maybe it's 10,000 years ago, maybe longer, maybe less, I'm not sure. But I also feel that I lived in Lemuria, and so I call it Mu. The Hawaiians call it Mu. Isn't that right, Stephen? Have you heard of that term, Mu?
That is absolutely correct.
Yeah. So, and I've met in this incarnation, I've met so many people that have been from that civilization. As a matter of fact, you talked about how you met your brother. Well, in 2007, I met my sister from Lemuria, and I just want to share the little how I met my sister. I was in Hawaii, and I was teaching in Hawaii. I was teaching on Maui. And the first week I was teaching, and the second week, and I thought I was just going to relax and spend it with my family on the beach and just veg. And all of a sudden I got these messages that I had to contact somebody I was going to meet somebody. And make a long story short, I started Googling some words, and I got a connection to go see this retreat center in Maui. And when I saw the owner, her name is Gina, when I saw the owner, and she saw me, we were crying. And because we knew we were from a different time, a different space, that we were connected, and we realized we were from Mu, or Lemuria. So my understanding of Lemurians, and my truth about Lemurians, is that it was a time of peace, a time of telepathy, a time of knowing, a time of light. It wasn't a time of, I didn't get the feeling there was a time of greed or a time of dishonesty. I mean, do you get that, Stephen? Do you get the same kind of feelings regarding Lemuria?
There was no ego whatsoever. It was all in spirit. Everything was done for the higher good of humanity, and there was no wars. They didn't have any jealousy. There was no reason to fight with your brother or your sister. I mean, they were very peaceful, loving people.
Absolutely. And my draw to Mount Shasta, I know with my heart and my soul, has been because of Lemuria. And I started my journey going to Maui in 2007. I did several retreats there. In 2.5 years, I went to Maui 5 times because I was on this quest, this search of trying to get to my roots, not this incarnation roots, but my spiritual roots. And I also met with elders and other people of knowledge, of spiritual knowledge there. And I felt like that was like part 1 that I was when I was tapping into Lemuria. And then thereafter, I started doing spiritual retreats in Mount Shasta. And when I went to Mount Shasta, I felt the same kind of energy of peace and ancient wisdom and ancient knowledge. So, and we've been doing annual retreats there as well. We're going back, I believe, in August or September. So I truly believe, Stephen, that some people may say that was an ancient civilization, but I believe it's still there. I believe that these beings are there and they're still informing us. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, I have an interesting story. When I was coming out here a couple of years back, and I discovered where this tunnel was. Someone sent me an email about a man who was hiking near Dunsmuir, California, with his daughter after a Thanksgiving dinner. This was in 2008. And they came across this unusual rock formation, and he put a picture of it up on the email that was sent. And out of this rock formation came a man who was over 7 feet tall with a robe, who spoke with a slight British accent, who told his father and daughter that they had come across the back entrance to Telos where they like to come in.
Interesting.
Now, the man, him and his daughter were scared out of their wits, and they said no. And the man, swore them to secrecy before he mysteriously disappeared back into the rock formation.
Interesting. That is interesting. And I that is my truth. I feel that when I go there, there is a connection there that I can't explain. And I see why you're there right now, Stephen, is why you keep going back, because I feel like you feel like you're home when you're there. Because when I go to Mount Shasta, I feel like I'm home. So whatever happened to J.C. Brown? Let's finish that story so we can get on to the levitating story you were telling me about on break. So
Well, in 1934, after 6 weeks of having the meetings there in Stockton, the morning of June 19th, 1934, they were supposed to leave. And you had 80 people that were assembled, doctors, lawyers, museum curators, and editors of newspapers, very prominent people. Some people even sold their possessions to go up to Mount Shasta. And he told them that at his expense, he would, fund the expedition. The morning that they were supposed to all go, mysteriously, he doesn't show up. So the police are called. They can't find any record of him. They're trying to figure out, after interviewing the 80 people, well, how much money did he steal? And the only thing they could ascertain is that he borrowed $5 while living in a homeless shelter. And the reason why he was there, he said, because he was a millionaire, and that if they had known he was a millionaire, then, he might not have, been alive. So he disappears. But when I found out who he was, I realized he went back to Mexico. He lived in Mexico until 1915 and went back to England and lived till 1940 while still employed for the Lord Cowdray Mining Company, where he died peacefully in Scotland in 1940.
Okay. So he's not MIA. He wasn't
No.
MIA. Okay. So he just disappeared on his own then.
Right, because he came up there under an alias, J.C. Brown, and his name was really John Benjamin Body. So no one could put the pieces together. The fact that he was not an American citizen and he only traveled into the country to come up to Mount Shasta made it very difficult for anybody to put this legend together.
Now I have a question. The military has a presence on Mount Shasta, which I was told that they really have no reason to have that presence there unless, okay, they have a presence there. I mean, I was told that they shouldn't have a presence there. There's really no reason for them to have anything there except for possibly hiding something. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Well, since I got here, I've had shadows more than my own, and they have a facility at the Hearst, the Randolph Hearst property in McLeod, where Blackwater, which is a security company, has helicopters that hover around here in Shasta in the areas where they're around here in regular times. They are protecting things on the McLeod side of the mountain, the Military Pass Road. I believe that there's a military installation underneath the mountain there where they have their facilities, because every time I go to that side of the mountain, I'm being followed and watched because they know that I'm the man of the tunnels and stuff. They even tried to buy all the rights of my show 2 years ago at the college because someone had dug a hole in the mountain and they were trying to blame me for digging a hole in Mount Shasta because they didn't want me snooping around probably to find any of their facilities.
Right, right. So it's just interesting how, the more they try to cover up, the more, evidence comes to the surface. And that must be frustrating for you because that they know that something is there, but then they don't want the world to know. And you're trying to enlighten the world. That must be so frustrating for you.
Well, it is because I've had a number of attempts on my life, and there for the grace of God go I. And I realized that if I wasn't doing my spiritual work, I would not be here on this call with you today.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's finish. We have a few minutes left. So let's finish the story about your brother Candu and Randu and how you spend time. You were talking before we went to break. You were talking about how you would go and share time together and pray together, and you were going to talk about the levitating real quickly. So,
well, after I discovered the back entrance and I showed him the photos, and we started praying much more often. He said that him and I were supposed to go up to the mountain in August, but just before that, he was getting very, very sick, and we were praying, me, him, and an ex-girlfriend and I, and all of a sudden, after this one affirmation, he levitated about 1.5 feet off the ground, and I had to bring him back down, and the other person realized that we all lost our balances, and then he turned around and says, "Thank you, Stephen, for bringing me back down," and that he had just levitated. 3 days later, I went to go see him again, and I went to his door, and his mail was all outside, and knocked on the door. He wasn't there, so I went up to Ashland for the day, and then I found out that he had fallen the night before, was in the hospital, and then I got a call the next day before I'm coming back that he had passed away. So right after I got the news, I went into the bathroom in my friend's house, and I was a little upset. He then came to me and told me to go out to the car and get my prayer book, and I did. He told me to go to a certain page and read something, and I did. And right afterwards, he said, "I'm going to be in angel training for a week, but I'm going to loan you," this is his words, "Edwin and Johnny, but after the week, I will be your personal angel." Well, for that whole week, he was waking me up every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning. I finally said, "Kenny, I know you're here. You can't keep doing this to me." So we came to this arrangement that we were going to communicate with one another, but it would be through automatic writing. So since he passed away in 2009 of August, I've been getting through with him mostly through automatic writing.
wow, that's pretty awesome. And what are you getting through automatic writing? What's coming through? That's different.
Whatever I need to know.
Okay.
Whatever I know.
Okay, so how about the entrance to Talos? I mean, can he give you that information, or is it something that you need to find out on your own?
Well, I was told that the other two caves in J.C. Brown legend, that I would be finding those caves, and that one of those caves, which I'll share to you today, was the Nola Van Baler cave, where she had met with Philos the Tibetan and other ascended masters for 10 years, and I've located this cave. And once the snow dissipates on the mountain, I will be going there. And I've been on a special diet. I've been eating raw, and I've been trying to live the spiritual life because I'm supposed to be met there with the people in Telos or on the other side.
Okay. So you're eating raw, that kind of, because I've been eating a lot of raw foods too. What is the connection with the raw food?
It gets rid of the density in your body, allows you to be spiritually uplifted, and allows you to tune in to the higher frequencies. Because in order to reach that fifth dimension, what I've been told is you have to cleanse your body of all the impurities that you've been putting in it.
It's so, I tell you, I've been on a raw diet since 2008. Not totally, but doing that. Okay, so we have a couple of minutes left. Stephen, would you like to share information regarding you and what you do and how people can get to know you a little bit better?
Well, right now I am trying to put together a movie site, a video on demand site. It's called webflix.com, webflix.com. And right now I'm in the process of putting this together with some software developers, and I'm trying to raise some money. So if anybody who wants a tax deduction or ways that they can help me get this off the ground, then they can go to my site, Webflix, webflix.com. And there are buttons that you can go on, or donation buttons to PayPal using either PayPal or Visa, or you can also just send a check to Catharsis Inc. at P.O. Box 554, Mount Shasta, California, 96067. For those people who want to see my movies that are out, they can go to my YouTube site, /Sindoni, Sindoni Productions, Productions, or they can go to some of my other websites, SindoniSays.webs.com or StephenSindoni.webs.com, and they can probably get as much information out of all that as I can share on the show today.
Yeah, sure. And I went on your YouTube page as well. You have some interesting, thought-provoking videos and information there that I'm sure will help other people. And then if they resonate with you, I'm sure there will be some donations there so you can continue the journey that you've started in this incarnation and continue the enlightenment. We're not here to convince anybody. We're here to enlighten those people that want to be enlightened, and we're here to continue to shed the light, spread the light, and really live our truth. There's really no other way, right, Stephen? It's living our truth and really evolving as a spirit.
Well, right now I'd like to quickly give out a devotional prayer for self and for world transformation. I live within the light, and I love within the light. I am sustained and nourished by the light. I joyously serve the light. For I am light, I am light, I am light. I am that I am in all that I do.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Stephen, very much. And those of you, if you want to contact Stephen and you didn't get all that information, just email me and I will connect you to Stephen. My website is tinasaachi.com. That's Tina, S as in Sam, C as in cool, hi.com. I wish all of you an enlightened journey. Thank you, Stephen, for being here, and we will see you in a couple of weeks. Remember, I'm here the second and fourth Wednesday of the month, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Namaste.
You've been listening to Living a Spiritual Life with Tina Saachi. Join Tina every second and fourth Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time on ContactTalkRadio.com. For in-person or over-the-phone sessions, events, products, and podcasts, visit her website, TinaSaachi.com. That's TinaSaachi.com. Allow yourself to live guided by your spirit. Namaste.